So yes, the next generation is different, but what happened, and Nick Bernadelle refers to this, we pass stories on from one generation to another, and those stories influence our identity. They shape our expectations, they set up stereotypes. But we as an educational institution, and I think other organizations like religious institutions, have a responsibility in making sure that we don't just bring people into the same physical space, that we bring them into contact with one another as human beings. And that's why, as a university, we must invest in the kinds of projects that I'm talking about. Dialogue workshops amongst the students, talking about who you are, your life's journey, where do you see yourself. And we're seeing some of the changes. For example, we have a big faculty of education. This year, for the first time, we saw enrolling in the teacher education programs students who have come out of the schooling system with, on average, a higher performance than we previously saw in teacher education. And the students are saying they want to make a difference to the quality of education in the country, and they believe they can do so by teaching. And these are both black and white students. So we're seeing changes, but it's not enough just to leave it as it is. The leadership in the country, no matter where we find ourselves, we have to do more by way of bringing people into contact with one another as human beings to, as I said, develop a true sense of empathy among our citizens.
Hi, Cheryl. Thanks for your inspiring speech. I also work in education, and I've worked in education for 7 years, and I work to eliminate and actually promote equalities and diversity in Hackney schools. I've heard you say black and white on a number of occasions, and you can hear the emotion in my voice because I also come from Mitchell's Plain. My family still lives there. I just wondered, being a, and I say in inverted commas, colored woman, how do I feature in South Africa? Am I also a black person, as you say? Because just going back to when I did try to go home in 2002, I was really incensed by the way I felt I was treated as an educated person at master's degree level. Being here 12 years now, this is not home. And you talk about identity. I don't feel that I belong, and I really, really want to go home. But the biggest concern for me is, where do I feature as somewhere in the middle? Sorry.
Shall I? You know, that's something that I do think is the kind of question that those of us of a certain generation think about. And it's less of an issue, just to go back to the question, the earlier question that I was asked, for younger people. The thing about the country is that the competition has increased. And it's like that all over the world. You have to claim your space. And for example, if I said to myself that the University of Pretoria is unlikely to appoint someone like me because they've actually never done this before, what I said to myself is I'm going to apply and give them the opportunity to choose me. And lo and behold, they did. So in my view, it's a dual responsibility between ourselves and putting ourselves there, taking the risks, because there was always the risk that I wouldn't succeed. But I was prepared for that, and I thought about it. But there's also the risk that I'll succeed. So it's a dual responsibility between myself as a citizen and the leadership, be it the government, the educational leadership, wherever we are. Yes, race is still an issue in the country, and it will be so for a while. We're not going to get over 300 years of racial issues in a very short space of time. It will take time. So I don't call myself a so-called colored. I didn't refer to it here. At home, I talk about being colored. I'm totally comfortable with that. It's not a term that is used outside of South Africa, but I'm quite comfortable doing so. And what we're really talking about is making or giving opportunities to people who have skills and will make a difference. And we've reached that point in the country. We value people at the university. We value you no matter what color you may be or what your racial classification. But it's important that there's a responsibility, and I talk to the students about their individual responsibilities, asserting themselves, making sure they take the opportunities as they arise. And on the other hand, I have a responsibility as a leader, as a citizen, in order to do my bit.
I am a fan of Homecome Revolution, and I just believe that in the face of all the negativity that is going on in the world and in the country at the moment, it provides an enormous counterweight, and it is worthy of being supported, and especially by people who claim to love the country. Now, my question is of an academic nature, is because of following what you had said earlier on, in terms of what defines a home, a nation, and a belonging, an identity, and identification. And I'm asking, what would you ascribe, or how would you feel with someone who says, I am a citizen of the globe, because we live in an increasingly globalized world, and you know, the globe is my home.
You know, there are many people who say that, but the interesting thing about the psychological research is that when you do psychological work with those people, the concept of home invokes the childhood experience. That's the connection. So the idea of a global citizen doesn't mean that the connection to where you grew up, where you went to school, disappears entirely. What it reflects is that there's greater human mobility in the world and in the 21st century. So I do expect many of the graduates of South African universities to go and live in other countries for periods of time. And many, in fact, work for proudly South African companies, and their companies will send them to work in the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and they may be there for quite substantial periods. Increasingly, companies are sending their employees to Spanish-speaking countries, so much so that we're teaching Spanish in the university. We are preparing our graduates to be part of a highly mobile 21st century workforce. That's a fact. But the psychological connection to home will be, and it continues to be, for all human beings, that sense of connectedness to where you grew up.